elected president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, visits President Muhammadu Buhari.
Minister of State Petroleum says deregulation of petroleum downstream sector is in the interest of ordinary Nigerians.
I want to assure you that with deregulation, it won't be difficult for us to do that, to fix these refineries, because these will be commercially viable ventures now.
The federal government approves additional 8.9 billion naira as hazard allowance for all frontline medical workers involved in the fight against COVID-19.
In addition, the procurement of personal protective equipment PPE for hospitals and isolation centers is in progress and will be given priority.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall continue our discussion on Edo 2020 governorship election campaigns.
Now, this quote by G.B. Shaw, that's George Bernard Shaw, author of Arms and the Man, and I quote, that an election is a moral horror, as bad as a battle, except for blood, a mud bath for every soul concerned in it, unquote. Now, that may sound extremist, but it does resonate still. And indeed, few election processes have gone by in many countries, especially developing countries, without any let of blood. Now, the build-up to state governorship elections in Edo and Ondo states here in Nigeria have not been deficient of any of the features Shaw talked about.
Now, as the Edo governorship election draws nearer, political parties, of course, are canvassing more votes in order to solidify their support base or win over more converts. Now, all political parties fielding candidates in the election have until midnight Thursday next week, that's barely a week now, to round off their political campaigns.
Now, certainly put, beyond the actual vote cast, political campaigns are a fundamental feature of any electioneering process. Now, they ought to be organized activities encapsulated to influence the choice process of a specific group of people and ultimately empower them to elect a leader of their choice. Now, just for emphasis, that I use the modal verb ought to reflect or connote a perfect situation. But as it usually turns out during every pro-election process, political campaigns are rarely what they should be.
Absolutely, Claire. Now, political campaigns ordinarily are supposed to be the opportunities for canvassing votes. And it's expected that the utilization of a multiplicity of platforms, including rallies, advertisements, and other media messaging, candidates will take their time to explain their ideas, plans, and policies to the electorate, and usually in clear and concise language. But as it turns out, what we have seen in our polity oftentimes is that you have an admix of messaging plus mudslinging and character assassination. And usually also there's a departure from the core issues and the manifestos of either the parties or of the candidates.
All right, and of course, Kingsley, regarding the upcoming Edo State governorship election, the National Election Umpire, that is INEC, security risk analysts, and indeed other critical holders in the stakes in Edo have raised concerns not only about build-up of dramatic events preceding the election between the two very prominent parties, the APC and the PDP, but also about their impact on the conduct, integrity, and outcome of the polls. Now, the incidents in Edo State specifically have kept security operatives on their toes, while apprehension fluttered through the people. Now, the monarch of Benin, that's Oba Ewari II, had to personally mediate between the two parties. On our part, that's the NTA, we have opened the floor for parties to leverage. So 2 days ago, specifically Wednesday, the governorship candidate of the APC, Pastor Osage Eze Iyamo, was on Good Morning Nigeria to share his vision and development priorities for the people of Edo State. Today, we feature another governorship candidate. I am Claire Adelapo Abdurrazak. It's going to be an epic edition.
That's right, Claire, and I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to welcome you also to Good Morning Nigeria. The candidate we'll be featuring today is that of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and that's the incumbent governor, Godwin Obaseki. He'll be, of course, our guest joining us from our Benin Network Center, and that will be during our discussion segment. Now, we, of course, have other parts of the program, as always, and those parts include business and newspaper review. As always, know that we are broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios right here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. In a moment, Comfort Omodu will be giving us the highlights of the morning news. I don't believe that Comfort, otherwise you're ready.
Okay. I am, of course. Good morning, Kingsley and Claire. And good morning, Nigeria. Thanks for joining us. Here's the morning news. Now, nothing succeeds like success. These were the exact words used by President Muhammadu Buhari to formally congratulate the newly re-elected president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who paid him a thank you visit. The AFDB president, who served as Nigerian's Minister of Agriculture from 2010 to 2015, overcame stiff opposition to win a second tenure in office, earning him high praise from the president, who described him as a good ambassador of the country. And President Muhammadu Buhari says the heightened global concern around food supply systems, notwithstanding, his administration would neither waver nor lose focus in its quest for food security. At a crucial meeting of the National Food Security Council, the president reassured farmers of government's continued support for the various food enhancement initiatives and many more to come.
The nation thanks our farmers for rising to the occasion and answering a national call. I am pleased to note that most Nigerians are taking advantage of the opportunities in the agriculture and the agri-business sector. I want to assure you that this government will continue to support these initiatives and many more to come.
I'm confident that the commitment of the Nigerian government, ably led by President Muhammadu Buhari, and mobilization of all stakeholders, there's very strong expectation of high output during this harvest season. Because Nigerians are waking up to the belief that, yes, we should take pride in what we produce and consume what we produce.
And to ensure the growth and development of the Nigerian economy, President Muhammadu Buhari has warned the Central Bank of Nigeria against issuing any kobo of the country's reserves for the importation of food items and fertilizer. The president gave the warning at the closed session of the National Food Security Council, saying he will pass it down in writing that nobody importing food should be given money. He emphasized the need to boost local agriculture as government rolls out the economic sustainability plans and sets goals for national food security. President Buhari also directed blenders of fertilizer to convey their products directly to state governments so as to skip the cartel of transporters, undermining efforts of successfully delivering the products to users at reasonable cost. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, heightened government's resolve to facilitate the cultivation of 20,000 to 100,000 hectares of new farmland in every state and support the offtake of agro-processing to create millions of direct and indirect job opportunities. On his part, Comptroller General of the Customs, Colonel Hamid Ali, expressed the hope of an early reopening of the partially closed borders, given the progress made with neighboring states in joint border patrols, one of the key conditions by Nigeria for reopening the borders. And deregulation of the petroleum downstream subsector is a policy direction in the interest of ordinary Nigerians. Minister of State Petroleum Timipri Silva, while interacting with journalists in Abuja, explained that with the latest development, will be able to develop refineries for optimal operation.
What we have done is to sequence the rehabilitation of the refineries. That project is going, the EPC for Port Harcourt Refinery will be signed in Q4 of 2020. And by Q1 2021, work will start in earnest. Discussions are ongoing with the rehabilitation of Warri and Kaduna as well. And I want to assure you that with deregulation, it won't be difficult for us to do that, to fix these refineries, because these will be commercially viable ventures now.
President Muhammadu Buhari has approved an additional 8.9 billion naira as hazard allowance for all frontline medical workers involved in the fight against COVID-19. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, made this known at Thursday's briefing in Abuja.
The procurement of personal protective equipment PPE for hospitals and isolation centers is in progress and will be given priority. We are in a global public health emergency situation, and we should eschew any action that will diminish the gains.
10% of the positive cases are children and adolescents, with more than half of them in the age bracket of 10 to 18 years. It is therefore pertinent at this point to renew the warning of the Presidential Task Force on the reopening of schools so as not to expose our children to the risk of infection.
There's no doubt the reopening of schools and learning facilities must happen at some stage. We cannot run away from this. The education of our children is important, but it must be done in a safe manner, and we must continue to take responsibility.
And the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and CDC announced 197 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. This brings the latest figures of confirmed cases to 55,829 infections in the country. A breakdown of the new cases from 13 states indicate that Plateau recorded the highest number for the day with 83 new cases. Lagos has 48. Kaduna 17. The FCT recorded 16 new cases. Others are Ogun with 11, Katsina 7, Imo 4, Edo and Nasarawa states recorded 3 cases each, while Rivers State recorded 2 cases. The day's tally is completed by Bayelsa, Oyo and Osun states recording 1 case each. A breakdown of confirmed cases by state shows Lagos has the highest with 18,504, followed by the FCT with 5,391, and Oyo comes third with 3,210 cases. With the latest development, total number of active cases stand at 10,944, while 43,810 cases have been successfully treated and discharged, while 1,075 patients died from the virus, unfortunately. In another development, a mysterious evening fire at the Akure headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, destroyed over 5,000 smart card readers for the October 10th governorship election. Shegun Ojelade, who was at the scene of the fire, reports that a fire which started around 8 p.m. razed the large container housing the card readers. Men of the Ondo State Fire Service who arrived at the scene shortly after the fire started were helpless, and their fire truck refused to work. INEC officials, including the National Commissioner in charge of Information and Voter Education, Festus Okoye, and the Ondo State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Ambassador Rufus Akeju, expressed shock at the incident. They said though the fire is a setback, it will not affect the governorship election. No life was lost to the fire. And that concludes the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Kinsley after the break. Good morning.
cries. She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. Time for business news with stakeholders in the power sector calling for proper understanding between electricity distribution companies, that's DISCOs, and their customers. Let's join our correspondent, Ronami Agirani, for details.
The recent hike in the electricity tariff has generated mixed reactions from stakeholders in the power sector. On one hand, the distribution companies say the new tariffs do not affect all consumers and will eventually lead to better delivery, while others, particularly consumers, believe that the new tariffs will be extremely detrimental to Nigerians as a whole, but especially small and medium enterprises. Prince Will Okorie, an analyst in the power sector, has called for a proper understanding between distribution companies and consumers, stating that the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, which is centered around consumer protection and licensing standards, should be respected.
What can be done now is let the federal government set up a committee to review that consumer protection component of the act, how it's enforced. And then the federal government need to really come up with a position, and NEC need to really do what is needful by setting up electricity consumer protection centers.
Meanwhile, on the stock market on Thursday, 10th September 2020, all-share index went up 0.38%, closing at 25,520 points, compared to Wednesday's 25,424 points. Market capitalization closed at 13.3 trillion naira, gaining about 1 trillion naira from Wednesday. Gains made were as a result of top-tier stocks like Zenith Bank, MTN Nigeria, and Guarantee Trust Bank. With business news, I'm Ronami Agirani.
All right, many thanks to you, Ronami, for the business package. Let's move on now. Newspaper review is coming up right now.
All right, so let's take a look at the window page of the Nation newspaper, and above the nameplate, the left-hand side, it says, "Why we quit NESG board by bank CEOs with the rider no corporate governance." NESG, of course, stands for the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. It's been a very influential group for more than a quarter century now. It holds its annual summit. Why we quit NESG board by bank CEOs and no corporate governance. Details, page 25. North Central Forum can't threaten North unity, says ACF. That's Arewa Consultative Forum. Details on page 8. UK court asks P&ID to pay Nigeria's £1.5 million fees. Gunmen abduct kid and others in FCT suburb. Details on page 6. Below the name flag, Edo 2020, APC and PDP tango over TV debate. Busloads of suspected thugs cited at government house, APC alleges. Obaseki family backs governor's re-election bid, and Isaiah Yamo promises viable civil service. Details on page 5. Lead story comes with a kicker. Agency, food scarcity likely with massive flooding. And Buhari halts CBN Forex for food and fertilizer import. You have a quote there from the story. It says, Kebbi State is not alone in this. Flood has washed away several farmlands in many states in the northern part of the country. As a matter of fact, all the states of the Federation have suffered severe degrees of flooding since June 2020. Abdul Salami's panel wades into Edo violence. Abdul Salami panel wades into Edo violence. Obaseki and Isaiah Yamo to sign peace pact on Tuesday. Details of that story from the front page with a continuation on page 8. Ghana's killing. Army seeks payment of 50 million naira bounty. That's page 25. And Dubai-bound passenger nabbed with 2,886 ATM cards. I take that again. Dubai-bound passenger nabbed, that is arrested, with 2,886 ATM cards. He probably owns all the accounts in the world. Clear. Summit and grazing by minors. That's on page 8.
Okay, Kingsley, that story talked about, we have a picture story of it. That's the ATM story. The picture story is on the front page of the Daily Trust. If we can just get it there. Officials of the Nigeria Customs Service discover 2,886 ATM cards inside packs of noodles, allegedly carried by a Dubai-bound passenger at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Ikeja, Lagos. You can see, these are the pictures, concealed inside noodles. Okay, let's get on to the main story on the front page of the Daily Trust. Nigerians groan as food prices rise. Now, the writers that come with that story, we can't afford 3 meals a day, citizens. Prices of food coming down. That's coming from the Agric Minister. And the presidency says, we won't give a cover for food fertilizer importation. Now let's take you to the trending stories below the nameplate. North Central People's Forum not rebelling against ACF chairman. Details of that on page 29. Insurgency. WAEC conducts exams in Chibok schools after 6 years. Details of that again on page 10. And federal government flags off 60 billion naira MSME survival fund. The details of that on page 16. Okay, so let's look at the trending stories at the foot of the paper. Again, Customs intercepts Dubai-bound passenger with more than 2,800 ATM cards. It's boldly there. Now, boat mishap claims 11 lives in Niger on page 7. Kaduna Assembly passes bill to castrate rapist. It's on page 6 again. Kaduna Assembly passes bill to castrate rapist. Now, card readers destroyed as fire guts INEC office in Ondo State. But again, as you heard, it will not affect the conduct of the elections in that state. Kingsley, anyone for us to talk about?
Well, yeah, there are a number of interesting stories. The passenger who was arrested with over 2,886 ATM cards, of course, will have his day in court, I believe, to explain how it came about so many cards. And we also have to praise the Customs Service for being vigilant and then picking him up right at the airport before he took off. There's a very strong presumption, as some persons have indicated, that this is probably part of a syndicate group.
Precisely.
Part of a syndicate, and it probably was just a mule. It was just a mule who was being used to convey those ATM cards for whatever purpose. And this is how people's accounts get hacked, and they lose money and they lose their savings. So it will have its day in court. Now,
the interesting story for me here is the insurgency, the conduct of exams in Chibok schools after 6 years. I think this is it's heartwarming that exams can be conducted in Chibok schools, which shows that academic activities are going on there in Chibok.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're certainly going to come to that after the horrendous atrocities wreaked on Chibok by Boko Haram terrorists in April of 2014. And the students at the material time were in fact getting ready to start their West African school certificate examinations. Unfortunately, well over 200 of them were abducted, and then began the Chibok School Girls saga. For the students now to return to Chibok exams and be in a position to write their exams tells you the resolve of government to say that, look, the terrorists cannot scare law-abiding citizens from carrying on their legitimate duties and businesses and other activities. And for this particular case, it does indicate that despite sporadic attacks from time to time that Chibok had experienced in recent years, the environment was safe enough for exams to have been conducted. A number of the Chibok school girls were released. Some others, of course, remain in the custody of the terrorists, along with, of course, with Leah Sharibu, who was abducted in Benue. So that's that. Food scarcity likely with massive flooding. We had the governor of Kebbi here with us last week, and he was talking about the consequences of the flooding on rice farming. Happily, in that part of the country, they're able to have 3 crops of rice, planting seasons of rice in a year. So as soon as the rivers recede in terms of their swollen sizes now, they will commence. And I think that's very important. Part of what the authorities should be looking at, I believe, would be what are the measures to take once the rains subside. In the coming weeks, yes, we're going to have this disaster. Once the rains subside, what will happen? What deployment do you need to make to get the farmers up, get them the right seedlings, right fertilizers, right inputs, and then get extension services to also come up? But more importantly, we also we don't hear much about the country's strategic reserve. Yes, during the coronavirus pandemic, when relief materials were being distributed, the president, of course, ordered that supplies from the strategic reserve be used for such distributions. Now, if you depleted those strategic reserves, did you then replace them? I think that's part of what we have to worry about.
Indeed, and there's just a new warning from NISA of more floods to come. So I guess we'll all be on the alert. But that's it from...
Yeah, just before you let's the other story, yes. Just before we'll wrap this up. Well, I'm sure the information will come out in the public domain, because when you read a story earlier about the Kaduna State House of Assembly approving castration as punishment for convicted rapists. Now, part of the story I was reading here also indicates that, all right, there was an initial tweet about the passage of that bill, and then after a while, the tweet was deleted. So are they standing by the story? Has the bill been passed? Does it prescribe castration? Do we have in any jurisdiction in Nigeria where castration is a punishment for rape? The country is suffering from an epidemic of rape, no question about that. But would castration be a sufficient punishment? And some persons would argue that that flies in the face of the constitutional provision that even where you have a death penalty imposed on a convict, it doesn't mean that you'll be chopping off the person's body and watching him bleed to death. There are ways of carrying out death penalty, but with castration then suffice. But it's a significant issue that we'll watch out for in future.
All right, Kingsley, thank you. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, today we're featuring the PDP governorship candidate, Dr. Godwin Obaseki. Don't go away.
NTA College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is currently admitting students for its ordinary diploma programs in television journalism, television production, and television engineering. Interested candidates are advised to obtain relevant information concerning eligibility at our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. For further information, contact Assistant Director, Marketing, NTA TV College Jos on 0803-314-4383 or the Academic Office of the College on 0806-980-9807. Announcer, Registrar.
I'm done. Really? Yes.
There's an easier way to get more data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool!
Wow!
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
All right, welcome back. Good morning, Nigeria is broadcast live on the network service of the NTA from our studios here in Abuja. Before we kickstart our conversation today on the continuation of Edo 2020 governorship election campaigns, let's listen to Victor Azu's backgrounder to set the tone for our conversation.
It is now 6 days to the Edo State governorship election, with 14 political parties jostling for the top job. However, the race has been dominated by two political parties, the All Progressives Congress APC, with Osagie Eze-Iyamu as candidate, and the now governing People's Democratic Party PDP, with incumbent Governor Godwin Obaseki as its candidate. The run-up to the September 19 poll has been characterized by lots of drama, with both candidates in a straight swap of political parties. Osagie Eze-Iyamu, candidate of the PDP in the 2016 elections, becomes candidate of the APC in 2020, just as Godwin Obaseki, winner of the 2016 election, flies the PDP flag this time around. Both candidates have, however, hit the campaign trail with a fierce determination to win over the electorate. While APC's Eze-Iyamu is selling what he calls the simple agenda, which talks about employment creation, infrastructure development, and security, among others, PDP's Obaseki promises to reinvigorate the successes of his first term by upgrading developmental projects, including the Edo Basic Education Sector Transformation, Edo Best. Both candidates have been campaigning hard and talking tough, a situation which creates the fear of possible violence. This has led to appeals for peaceful and issues-based campaigns and elections from stakeholders, including the Oba of Benin.
Please, I want to beg you, I want to plead what I want to hear from both parties. From today, you have visited us, you want to assure me, one way or the other, we work together with Pastor Eze together, not different. Because you just know what.
As D-Day inches ever closer, the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's first and largest television network, is providing the opportunity for candidates to discuss the issues, with Osagieze Yamu of the APC taking a stand on Wednesday. Now, as the PDP candidate Godwin Obaseki, already seated in the studio, sells his manifesto, Nigerians, particularly those from Edo State, will be hoping that the days ahead will remain focused on the issues and a peaceful election.
All right, let the show begin. And seated already here with us in the Abuja studio, we have, of course, the two discussants who were here on Wednesday. Let me begin by introducing Esther Uzoma. She's a familiar face, a firebrand, co-convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. Esther, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Claire. Good to be here.
Also with us, Dr. Sharif Gali Ibrahim, also another firebrand of the Department of Political Science, University of Abuja. Dr. Sharif Gali, thank you once again for finding time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and from our Benin Network Center, we would like to welcome His Excellency Godwin Nogagase Obaseki, who is the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, in the Edo 2020 governorship election. The elections, of course, are due on the 19th of this month. That's just about 8 days from now. Your Excellency, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Kingsley, and thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll begin the conversation with you, Your Excellency, as a candidate of the People's Democratic Party, and take some questions before we bring in our other guests here in the studios, and we'll revert to you from time to time. Now, you are seeking re-election as governor of Edo State. In 2016, you ran on the platform of the All Progressives Congress, and you were successful. But observers indicate already that this year's election is like no other that the state had witnessed, whether as the old Bendel or even now as Edo State. But from your own point of view, Excellency, what is also different about the 2020 Edo governorship election? And
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley. The elections which will take place on the 19th of September certainly introduces new elements into the political landscape of our country. First, this is one occasion where an incumbent was refused ticket by his former party, clearly not because he didn't do well, but because of the style and some personalities within the old party. And so we have a very interesting situation where the two contestants, or the two people who contested in 2016, have reappeared, but on different sides of the political divide. So that raises the question of, do parties really matter, or is it individuals that drive our politics? The second issue at stake is that what is really, why am I recontesting? Why am I seeking re-election? All observers will agree that in the last 4 years, we have undertaken fundamental changes in the structure of our society in Edo State, in terms of accountability of government to its people, in terms of programs, driving programs, even in terms of its politics, ensuring that people begin to get the benefits or the dividends of democracy, as has become a popular usage. So those fundamental changes certainly have led to shifts and uncertainties in certain areas. And so this election is to test whether those changes, those fundamental changes we've made in our society will hold or will revert back to the old order. And what are some of these changes? First, our approach to governance, to demystify governance and the office of the governor, that the office of the governor is powerful to the extent that the Constitution makes it powerful. It's powerful to the extent that it responds to the needs of its people. And the governor is not there for himself, he's there for the people and not just for a clique. That has been tested in these elections. The second thing that's been tested is programs. The programs of our government, is it touching the lives of the people of Edo State? Look at what we've done in education. See what we've done in infrastructure. Look at what we've done in food production. And also in terms of the rule of law. Are these policies and programs, like we said, they have upset the apple cart. And therefore, these elections will be to test whether the beneficiaries of our programs, the beneficiaries of the changes we have made, are prepared to come out to defend those changes. Do they see them as what they really require, or do they want to go back to the old order? Because if you look at it, I am a new entry, a new participant in the politics of Nigeria. My opponent has been there since 1999. And so the difference is very, very clear. So these elections, as I said, is to test first whether our democracy is being deepened, whether the changes that we have made in the last 4 years are what the people want, and whether these changes are going to truly reposition Edo for the future.
All right, thank you, Governor Godwin Obaseki. Again, you have hinted, of course, at the programs that you've been able to do. But I know that your opponent is flying a simple campaign message, which is, paying attention on issues like security, social welfare, infrastructure, manpower, and of course leadership examples, which imply gaps in some of these areas. So what new, as Kingsley said, since you're seeking a second term, what new value are you bringing in, and in this term that you weren't able to, implement in the 4 years that you have stayed?
First, I have to understand what has happened in the last 4 years. What are the fundamental changes that we have made in Edo, and what has made us different as a government? Let's look at the area of people. When we came into government in 2016, Edo hit the news globally as the seat for human trafficking. The kids did not want to live at home, anywhere else but home. So they would take very dangerous and hazardous journeys across the Sahara, trying to get to Europe through crossing the Mediterranean. Once on reflection, we found out that the major challenge was very poor education. The educational system had collapsed. These children were not receiving the right quality of education that could give them jobs when they left school. So we've just found a situation where in most of our cities, the children or youths between the ages of 15 and 27 just turned out as almost unemployable, and they wanted to leave. So for us, education became a focal point that we had to reenact our educational system, particularly basic education. And what we've done in the area of basic education has been applauded globally, because today the children are happy going to school, because they are now learning in school. The teachers have been retrained, that we've given them digital devices. We've improved their curriculum. We now ensure attendance by pupils and teachers in our schools. The outcome is that our kids are now learning. Our children now learn in a term what they used to learn in 2 or 2.5 years. The area of governance, today I can tell you that what we have earned as a government in 4 years, relative to what we have spent in the area of infrastructure, is, some people have said it's mind-boggling. That how could, with declining revenues, how could we have achieved so much transformation in our physical space? How could we have built the extent of road networks we have built? How could we have built the physical infrastructure in terms of our secretariats and renewed as schools? In the area of food production, we've keyed into the federal government's programs, we've accessed facilities, and we've revamped existing assets, existing farm assets across the state. We're now interesting young people to now go back into farming. I could go on and on. In every aspect of our lives, we have touched our people. But this is just 4 years. It's not enough time to entrench what we have done on a sustainable basis. For instance, we undertook a geographical information review. So we now have a GIS in Edo State where we have mapped the entire state to the extent that we can now issue certificates of occupancy within a 60-day time frame. That is the first phase in that program, in that project. We need to go to the next stage where we use all that data, that information to do our urban planning, to do our regional planning for the state. These are programs, there are several programs that we have started. They're doing well. We begin to see the benefits. We need to deepen them, and we need to sustain them into the future.
All right. Your Excellency, Godwin Obaseki, we are tempted to continue with you, but we want to give you the opportunity to take a sip of water, warm or at room temperature, because it appears that your throat is parched. We do experience it ourselves in the studios from time to time.
I think he has done that.
All right, so if you are comfortable enough to continue, maybe take another sip so that it really goes down and clears your airways. But I still would like to stay with you, therefore, if you're available to continue to run on this. You talked about the cardinal issue in this election, which is to say testing the fundamental shifts which you have framed as approach to governance and delivering dividends to the people rather than to a clique. And that this is what you want to be sure is been done, plus what you were just atomizing a while ago as some of your cardinal achievements. But in the lead up to the election, there's been, some persons would say, a lot of hot air, which is noise, and then there's also been a lot of threats of violence, and I think a couple of heads have also been broken, but happily, probably there are no fatalities just yet. But why, therefore, is the state so tensed up if indeed, this is what is afoot, namely testing the fundamental or tectonic shifts, as you put it?
I think we should try and look at it from a couple of perspectives. First, what has shifted? In terms of our politics, what we have done is to try and use our politics to govern, to understand what needs to change. The issue of the way we've always organized our politics and our parties, I believe that in the last 4 years, that has changed significantly. In the past, we relied on thugs and enforcers to drive our politics, not necessarily our programs, because, some of the people who governed before me never truly believed that the people could matter and the people could express themselves. So you had an army of, you had an army of people on the streets claiming to either be politicians or political enforcers. And when I got into office, I realized that these people, these non-state actors, were extracting so much from government resources, particularly at the local government levels. Revenues that were due to local governments were being collected by these individuals as payback for their political participation. And that meant that the local governments, which is the base of governance, was almost comatose in the state. So part of what, so when you do an analysis of the violence or the threat of violence, is that some of these displaced actors became unhappy that they didn't, their jobs had been taken, even though we had offered them alternatives. But they had become too comfortable, too wealthy on feeding off state resources, that for some of them it was unacceptable. So they've gone back, so their political masters have now aggregated them, and they've called themselves all sorts of names, including lions and tigers, and they believe that they can continue to access political power using the old tools from the past, which is violence, and not trying to convince the people that they now have, that the people should, vote for them or sway the people onto their side. What we have done in the last 4 years is that we've gotten most, bulk of Edo people to have a stake, to see that they have an interest, a stake in our democracy through the way we have governed. So part of the threats of violence or, noise about violence you hear is principally coming from those actors and their bosses. They say, well, we will come back to power by force using the tools we've always used in the past. It doesn't matter what the people say. It doesn't matter what the people want.
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. When we started our conversation this morning, we took a quote from Bernard Shaw, and he says, an election is a moral horror and a mud bath for everyone concerned in it. And we have seen, this displayed in the build-up to the election, specifically the Edo, governorship election, as Kingsley earlier indicated. But you were quoted once to have said in one of the interviews you granted that you will tame potential lions and tigers who plan to derail or disrupt the conduct of the elections. I'm wondering, Your Excellency, if you have really mastered the peaceful act of taming lions, and all that. So if you have, how are you dealing with the issues of violence and ensure that it doesn't, it's not what bootmakers are predicting?
I think the way we've looked at it is first to emphasize the tenets, the real core elements of democracy, which is to say, look, rather than just sit out mudslinging, hiring thugs, get on the campaign trail. Go to every ward in the state. Go and sell your message to the people. Go and convince the people that you have something to offer and that, that they can achieve their aspirations, their goals through the democratic system we have in place. And we've gone around the 192 wards preaching our messages and preaching peace and say, look, at the end of the day, the best way to tame, the lions, the political lions and tigers is through your PVC, to ensure that you go in there, and because you are in the majority, they do not have the force, they will not have the force of people to undo what majority of our citizens have decided on. The second is to continue to appeal to the law enforcement agencies. I mean, it's quite interesting that even though I'm the chief security officer of the state, I've been attacked severally. When we went to the Inspector General of Police a couple of days ago, we listed 13 incidents of attacks by the opposition party against my party, PDP. And I said, look, if the opposition have claims, they should also present it to the public. But as chief security officer, I have not asked police, the law enforcement agencies to go after them. I've not arrested people arbitrarily. Where the police has even gone ahead to try to do its job legitimately, they have found ways to try to go and get these culprits released and try to avert the court process. As I speak today, despite all the cases of violence that have been reported, not one has been prosecuted, even though I am the chief executive of the state. So it says quite a lot. And lastly, we've continued to preach the message of peace. When we had the meeting, the peace meeting at the palace of His Royal Majesty, the Omonobade Kwakpolopolo, I hugged Pastor Sage Zeyamo and to tell the world that, look, we're close, we mutually respect each other. But the problem is not with the two actors, myself or my opponent. There are other non-contestant actors. Some of them are political actors. Some of them have business interests. They are the ones who are propelling the violence in the state. They are the ones, interestingly, they have always been actors in the politics of the state since 1999. And this is the way they used to run the politics. So for them, the Obaseki style is very strange, and therefore it must be curtailed because we have to go back to what we're used to, which is using the voice on the streets to harass people, to try and enforce their wishes or desires.
All right. Thank you very much, Governor. Again, just to note 2 points before we pop our next question. On Wednesday, when we had the candidates of the All Progressives Congress, Pastor Sage Zeyam, would join us from our Benin Network Center, we did announce to our viewers that you would be available either yesterday or today, and happily today you are around. There were some issues that he raised that we said you will have the opportunity of responding to those issues. If you have an aid memoir, that should be helpful. But otherwise, we'll remind you of some of the things that were said, not the character assassination or mudslinging that everyone is complaining about, that has also been the feature of this election. So just before I come to that, for the benefit of our viewers, the point that the governor made a while ago is as follows, that the two leading candidates permitted, without meaning to be disrespectful to the other candidates in the election, they know each other very well. And by the way, they come from two very prominent families in Benin. But there's no question about that. Everybody knows the two families. But, Your Excellency, one issue that came up from our conversation on Wednesday has to do with the claim that, yes, you are driving infrastructure, you are revamping education. They say you govern by MOU. That's the so-called Memorandum of Understanding. And that there isn't much that you have to show for it. What's your reaction to that claim?
For me, it's ludicrous. It's really, laughable. First, as government, you cannot go into transactions, particularly with the private sector or private businesses, without having an understanding which is documented. I am not surprised because when I came in as governor, I couldn't find one investment which the state government made during the tenure of when Pastor Zeyam served in government, when my opponent served in government. All the claims, all the investments they made using public funds were all bankrupted. And it shows that no thorough analysis, no deeply thought agreements were put in place before these transactions were entered. I put to him that he should show us one investment that was made while he served either as chief of staff or secretary to government in Edo State for 8 years that exists today. So I'm not surprised that they do not understand the meaning and the import of having, agreements or memorandum of understanding as a basis for interacting or a basis for engaging the private sector. And it's not far-fetched. If you look at the background of my opponent, he's always been in government. He's never worked in the private sector, never done anything outside of government. So, so he may be challenged in understanding what MOUs mean and why they are necessary. But let's even go to the MOUs we have signed. Every area where we have engaged with the private sector, is it in terms of electricity? We signed an MOU with partners of Azura while I was the chairman of the economic team, and that project was delivered, and it's there today, right? The bulk of the electricity there goes into the grid and not for our use, and as a result, we went back, signed another agreement with another private sector player in terms of Osiomo Power. If you come to Benin today, you see the construction is complete, and by next week, the switch on will be done. The evidence is all there because we've interacted with several other players, electricity regulators, and so forth and so on. In terms of a modular refinery, it's there. What my opponent does not understand is that unlike in 1999 or 2003, the world has changed. Information technology has taken over. So there's an extent to which you can lie, because facts can be checked. Pictures don't lie. The evidence is there on ground. So if our claims are true that we only sign MOUs and there's nothing on ground, why are Edo people cheering us? Why are Edo people, in praise of what we have done? Does it mean the majority of people too have been deceived by these MOUs? And that comes to the core of our politics and where we are in Edo today with regards to politics. Yes, they're used to mudslinging to scare away and put off people who have something to offer in government. Someone who has accomplished, has, achieved so much in their private lives don't want to come into government because some of these actors have painted it dirty. They want to splash mud on you as a tactic for preventing quality people of accomplishment to come into politics. That's what they know. But it's, to be scared is so dangerous for our political evolution. And so I'm not surprised that for them, the strategy is first negative propaganda, mudslinging, and violence. Not sit across the table and have very healthy debates, very frank, honest, truthful conversation about projects, about policies, and about the direction of our people.
Okay, Governor Basiki, just a reminder that Nigerians are ranked as one of the most happy people. So they would always cheer, even in the midst of a gloomy coronavirus pandemic, Nigerians are cheering. But regardless, government is said to be a continuum, implying that if a preceding government initiates people-friendly development infrastructural projects, that succeeding government would always, carry on with such projects and, take it to a completion. But the argument has been that in your 4-year tenure, you seem to have ignored some laudable projects initiated by your predecessor.
Here again, it's really, really unfortunate that my predecessors could make such claims. Because, these are claims that can be verified. Where there's projects. One of them he claimed was the rainstorm project to drain a part of the city. I don't even want to talk about the procurement, the costs of that project. I've decided to ignore it, just like I've ignored so many things about, some decisions that were made in the past, which I'm now beginning to find out. That project was never stopped. I'm sure maybe it's the fear of what happened previously that, is haunting him, but I've never stopped that project. As I speak, that project is on. We're still paying the contractors on it, even though I have serious questions about how it was procured by him and the commissioner who did it at that time. He talked about the hospital project. I mean, the world has seen what happened. It's, despite the scandal related to it, that hospital is functional today. So I challenge him to say, which projects did I abandon? When I have, as government, gone to continue projects that were abandoned after the General Ogbomodia's regime. I am rebuilding projects that have been abandoned for 40 years. Why would I abandon those of the past administration in which I was part of? These are the things we must eradicate in our politics. Political actors, particularly people who should be statesmen, should just not conduct themselves the way some of them are conducting themselves. I mean, how can you just lie so blatantly? I mean, these facts can be checked. And you expect people to look up to you and show respect to you. These are the kind of tendencies that we must eradicate from our politics.
Sorry, Kingsley.
Yeah,
sorry. Your administration has also been tagged as a rapper-given administration. I mean, indicating the quality of the services and the dividends of democracy you claim to have built. Can you speak on that?
I didn't get that. I mean, it's a rapper or
Yes, rapper given tenure, where you dole out probably insignificant projects and things like that.
Well, here again, you see, you will always look at life from your own perspective. You only see things, from the way you know how to do things. So when you want to interpret what others have done, the tendency is to talk about it from your own prism, from your own standpoint, which may not, and usually may not be the reality. So let's take the core elements of our reform. In terms of education, where we have enacted a basic educational system, where we have, we went into an agreement with a technical partner and we've trained almost all our teaching staff. We've given them the aids, the tools, the technology aids to work to teach our children. How can that be a rapid, or how can that be a cover-up? Because you have 270,000 children in our school system today receiving that education. We have a portal. You can go in there and check and see these children, their pictures. We have data on their parents. So how can that be rapid? The teachers are there giving testimony. Is it the road networks? We just don't tie roads, we tie communities. We go into an area and we fix the infrastructure within the community. Is it the broadband that we've introduced? We went into another MOU with a main fiber provider, and they've laid 400 kilometers of fiber across Edo State. Can that be rapid? It's there. But these guys, in terms of when they governed, never even imagined that government could achieve this. So for them, it's a mirage. For them, it doesn't exist. And it's so wild where you are propagating, you're saying, this, this government has done nothing. And the people are looking at them and say, where are they from? Are they from this planet? Can't they see the buildings? Can't they see the physical structure? You are denying that a building exists. You are denying that a physical structure exists, even if you want to deny, some policies. Today, we issue certificates of occupancy in Edo State within a 60-day time frame at no more than 50,000 naira. It never happened in Edo State. Since the creation of Edo till date, only 2,000 certificates of occupancies have been issued. In the last 1 year, I have issued almost 10,000. So for them, it's a mirage. But the people who have applied for them own them. So I think that's the fight. That's where we are at, and that's why the elections or the activities leading to the election are so intense, because there's such a fundamental shift that has occurred. And those actors who played in the past see themselves as highly threatened that after the 19th of September, they will not be relevant. Because today, they have to defend, their past, their political past. I am not going in to ask questions. We have just gone out to do the things we told our people we were going to do. And our people are now responding. And so what's their reaction? Lie? Say what exists doesn't exist? Bring out your voice? Call them lions and tigers and tell them to attack the people. That's where we are. But there's nothing like the will of the people. They will be overwhelmed come September 19th.
Well, thank you very much. But just before we bring in our two analysts here with us on the show, I want to take this question. How challenging has it been for you engaging the gear for what you refer to as the fundamental shifts in governance? And before the voting, are the people behind you in this challenge?
Well, it's been quite difficult because, governments up till now, the government had always run on a certain logic, maybe I'll say on a certain illogic, which is to say that once you're in politics, once you're in power, you are there because the benefits of power must accrue to you. So you are the ones that should get the contracts, whether they procure properly. So as a political actor, you get the contracts, you sell the contracts. So a contract that you could have procured for 100 naira, you end up procuring it for 300 naira. But here comes a government that says, sorry, we don't have enough. Instead of procuring that contract at 300 naira, we will insist on 100 naira so that we can do 3 of those projects, not 1 as it used to be. Because the population is growing, there's a youth bulge, we have a social crisis, so we've got to put all we have, no matter how little, into projects for the people. Clearly, it hurts, because that is how, some of them have lived all their lives. So you say, what is your business? And they cannot tell you this is what they do independent of politics. So those shifts have been harsh. Some of the people, affected are close to you. Some of them are even family. So to that extent, it's been tough, but it's the right thing to do. That's the only way we can get out of the mess we are in, using that democratic tools. Sorry, I just trying to remember the second part of your question.
Do you have the people backing you up in this challenging effort of engaging the gear for a fundamental shift, even though the outcome of the elections could, of course, give out the numbers? But in the lead up to the election, do you have the people who say, yes, what you are doing in trying to shift the gears is right?
I will be shocked if we have less than 80% of the people behind us. And the reason for this is as follows. First, you could see the rapid transformation in the social and business landscape in Edo State. In 2016, at best, 1 flight came into Benin every day. Today, not less than 7 flights coming into a city on a regular basis. People cannot be coming in such large numbers if something is not going on here. today, you find that you go to the markets, you go to areas where businesses are conducted, and people are so happy they can see their businesses growing because you don't find these touts, these hooligans, come to harass them, come to extort them. And so you can see that for most people, even market women, small traders, that burden of extra paying them extra taxation to private individuals have all gone. So how do you expect them to feel? Parents, most people were withdrawing their children from public schools because no education was being offered. You can imagine somebody who drives a motorbike for a living, sending his child to a private school because, the public schools were not offering education. Today, these people are now moving their children en masse from private schools into public schools. Not because the infrastructure has been improved, but because there is now learning, and they can see the difference in the lives of their children. So all of this, they're not fools, they're not stupid. They know that they're beginning to benefit. They can see they have a stake in government, in governance. They have something to lose if some of these policies are derailed. And therefore, they've all come around. You can see they're the ones cheering us on. At our rallies, our ward rallies, I was amazed to see the amount of support we have across the state. Unlike our opponents who were rallying in local governments, and you could count how many people came out for those rallies. We did not purchase any crowds because we went to those communities and people came out en masse. The second aspect is that people also fail to remember that I have now moved into a much stronger and more popular platform, the PDP. The political DNA of Edo is PDP, in alignment with the region. We were struggling to try and sell the other party and the promise. And the people began to believe. And the moment that impunity and lawlessness was exhibited in the party, the people said, you know what? It's not about the party, it's about you. Wherever you go, we will go. And so what you have today is a groundswell of a very popular candidate going to a very strong party within the state. So I don't see where they're going to come from. The only way out is to do what they're doing, just perpetuate violence and create a perception of violence so that people either don't come out or the elections are postponed.
All right, thank you, Governor Obaseki. Thank you. We'll just pause you for a while, just to say that it's actually the electorates have the final say of which political party is more popular, and that, of course, will reflect in the outcome of the elections at the end of the day. But let's come back to the studio. Esther, I'll start with you, and let me start with the approach to governance, which the governor talked about. He says in his first 4-year tenure, he had demystified governance. We would expect that would reflect in the conduct of political leaders, at campaign grounds and any other campaign platforms, isn't it? Have you seen that in the Edo build-up to the elections?
Well, that phrase, the mystification of governance, perhaps is one phrase that civil society have always, propagated for. What it means, if you ask me, is more access, openness, their budget on the net. If you apply for documents, you get it. Freedom of Information Act being, I think that is, it doesn't mean anything more than that, the mystification of governance. It can also mean, more access to the person of who the CEO, So generally, one thing for sure that has happened in Edo State is that I doubt if people are really interested, because you have about
interested in what? The demystification approach.
In who is in charge. They just want to have a good life. Over 2 million registered voters, less than 2 million, about 1 million or so that have taken the pains to collect PVCs. So you find that the destiny really of Edo people the next 4 years lies in the hands of this very silent, about less than 2 million, 1.8, 1.4 million people. That is it. Yaga Africa did bring a survey of recent, talking about perception of persons to certain institutions. They stated that 46%, quite high, of people do not have faith in INEC. 46% of persons in Edo State do not have faith in INEC. That speaks a lot. But however you ask, is it 46% of persons with PVCs or 46% of the tigers and the lions? They make so much noise. So, but that is it. But generally, there has been a level of ease of approaching, institutions. If you ask me in Edo State, you make requests, you are answered, or at least there's a courtesy of a response, if you send in a memo. Now, His Excellency raised a very fundamental point that this politics will define whether it is about the person or the party. The Supreme Court has said it over and over again that votes belong to the party. But in this country, continually we see that our politics, governance, is always driven by what? Individuals. So you find superstars who emerge, they just become bigger than the institutions. Sometimes that's why the people are always overreaching the law and all that. They just become superstars. Suddenly you find sometimes, be it in the FCC, police and all that, they just become so powerful. They are all over, they're so powerful, you can't approach them. With profound respect, it's easier for persons to assess, approach, criticize. We don't see that state. They don't have records of of imprisoning, critics like you find in Kaduna. You understand? Yeah, you don't have such records. Now, if you also look at what the IGP is doing, law enforcement, the interface that Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room had recently with the IGP, at the pleasure of the IGP, by the way, he made it very clear. In fact, there are some persons have been arrested, some huge gladiators have been arrested and are being prosecuted. The law, all right, the institution of state, the police as a primary driver, of security in elections, they have demonstrated so far from our assessment their intention to be unbiased, all right, to follow the law as it is. They have demonstrated it. The issue of fake police, fake security that featured prominently in Kogi, steps have also been taken because we are constantly, in touch with the situation room of the Nigerian police. Okay, so all those steps are being taken. But one thing that will be very, very critical, the voter is not aware extensively or to a large extent of the new code of conduct for the voter. There's a new code of conduct for the voter. Voting is anchored on possession of PVC. But if you come without a face mask, you cannot vote. These are dimensions of, access to the ballot that eventually the law will interpret. If you don't come with a face mask, you cannot vote. If you come with displaying symptoms, all right, yes, because there will be thermometers to, on the spot, all right, check people's temperature. people who will probably be standing under the sun. Okay? So, but this new code of conduct say, listen, if you come there and they test you, your temperature is high, they may, all right, ask you to do what? Step aside. We saw INEC chairman briefing, the Center for Disease Control. So these are things that will eventually, because you might find, because like we do always find in the field, that strongholds, you find out that these persons might now eliminate voters in strongholds of the opposition based on this. These are some of the issues that will eventually come to, would need judicial decision.
Was this tested at the Nasarawa Central Constituency election, by-election?
Yes.
Was it deployed?
Yes, and some other technology that was test run, like the Z-pad, that was supposed to provide alternative or reinforce authentication of the PVC, was used in Nasarawa. But they said, listen, we're not going to use this Z-pad in Edo. All right, so there's so much experiments. We're going to, this Edo election, so many things will be tested. All right, look at, yes.
Esther, thank you very much. I mean, you raised a number of important points, voter education and responsibility of party agents.
That's
I
right.
think these are issues that the political parties themselves will have to worry about. If you, as you have indicated, sometimes politicians believe that you have to diminish access in the strongholds of your opponent so that fewer votes come from that location. So I think it will be the duty of party agents to be sure that the thermometer that is being used is set at 0 before it starts, so that it doesn't have it doesn't have 10 degrees added to it, and they put it to your head like this, and the thing is reading 40 something. They say no, or guys step aside, or madam step aside. All right, we're going to have to take a short break now, and when we return from the break, we continue with the conversation.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Gunners travel to Craven Cottage in the early kickoff to begin their challenge for the Premier League title. Will they get the win to start off their campaign? Find out as Fulham host Arsenal this Saturday on the Premier League Live from 12 noon, showing on the NTA network. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Jebu and Axis Bank.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We'll still have all our three guests, Governor Godwin Obaseki of Edo State, and candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the September 19 governorship election, Esther Uzoma, a lawyer and co-convener of Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, here with us in the Abuja studios, Dr. Sheriff Gali Ibrahim of the Department of Political Science, University of Abuja. Gali, look, there are a number of issues on the table, but I would like you to speak to one of those issues. You listen to the candidate of the PDP, who is incumbent governor, talk about what the election is virtually, it's all about, what would it come down to, testing, in his words, the fundamental shifts that he has enunciated. Plus, significantly, that, look, he's chummy with the candidate of the APC, but that non-state actors who have political and business interests oftentimes are the ones who fund the embers of discord and also, allegedly, those who foment trouble and cause mayhem and anxiety and tension. I would like you to respond to these issues before we turn to the governor.
You see, if you look at critically the ambience of politics and democracy, there is no way you divorce, support. Even outside Nigeria, Africa, you look at a continental differentiation. Going to Europe and United States of America, you see that we have institutions that support, candidates in terms of elections. Even though there are questions, on that, if it is with the intention, to pay back, especially the multinational corporations existing within a polity. Definitely, you must not, directly show your support for a candidate. It's supposed to be neutral. So, but there is no way you divorce such a non-state or even internal support, or intervention in such a polity. But what I would like to emphasize on is the issue of demystifying the process of governance, demystifying the process of governance to the positive side, that will actually usher in democratic dividends, for the benefit of the electorate as well as members of the state. I think that is the best reality that we should have envisaged and work after, to be achieved. But the issue here is that demystifying the process of governance in Edo State, if it were, for you to kick against, because it takes a lion heart to demarcate, between the lines of loyalty and disloyalty or loyalty and political betrayal. I think the executive governor of Edo State, the incumbent governor, has made a gross mistake, ab initio. What kind of mistake did he make? Was that when you try to ban the entrance of the members of your own political party into the government house, I think it is a sheer mistake, initially, which was the genesis of the entire crisis, that we are facing today in Edo State. Why? Because history always repeats itself. We go back to the example, Ekiti State has been an epitome of political failure or progress in Nigeria. Why? Because look at what Fayeshe did, in the long run, trying to antagonize members of the political party. And in the long run, what occurred? They went against him, they campaigned against him, and they made sure that they brought him down. What he was looking for, he couldn't actually get. So, no matter how, your family remains your family. Because a member of an APC, regardless of, what he is, who he is, he belongs to that particular political party, and you must actually romance together politically. So initially, you ban this particular people coming, either they are businessmen or even non-state actors, but provided support, to the state for its political development. I think that was the genesis of the crisis. Then the second aspect is...
just before you get into the second aspect, do you have any evidence of the governor? He will speak for himself. Yeah. But do you have any evidence that the governor banned? You have used that word twice.
You see, I think it is not hidden because that was all the genesis, especially those appointed or those who were Oshomole loyalists, as of that particular time, especially those in charge of the revenue collection, etc., etc. So this triggered the crisis initially. It is there written, documented. The newspapers have carried us this news, but he will actually add on that. So the second issue is I want to emphasize on is the issue of plagiarized political campaign slogan. Looking at Make Edo Great Again, this is exactly what we've seen and heard, from Donald Trump, of United States of America, make America great again, so make Edo great again. I think Governor Godwin Gase Obaseki, I like the name, should have actually made a shift, in that particular slogan, not to have copied or plagiarized the Donald Trump's campaign slogan or mantra. And I think they also share some characteristics, to that extent. Why? Because Donald Trump divorced his own political friends. And that is why even those appointed by Donald Trump were resigning, leaving him in office. And that is why we experience also resignations of some commissioners as well as other members of the State House of Assembly who try not to show their allegiance, to the governor and belong to the other camp. So these processes are processes that are antithetical, to political progress and development. So the issue of the conduct of the Edo governorship elections comes 19th September. The governor himself, I think, is a big figure in this particular trend. Why? Because it is going to be legitimacy by result. The assertions of 80% of the Edolite, behind him, the legitimacy by result will actually speak for him, as he just asserted. And one major issue here is that the opposition claim that how could Obaseki earn the support of the masses in Edo State when he has not built road? Allegedly, this I'm trying to paraphrase what Oshomole himself said, that he has not built primary schools. He has not built secondary schools. He shut down College of Education. He shut down School of Nursing, and he shut down the Central Hospital, which he said sooner or later it will start actually functioning, or it has been functioning. So these are all trends that and allegations, the negative campaign process that we have been, conversing, on. So he need to demystify these particular allegations, in order to just that. Then another issue is the issue of the fundamental changes. And the incumbent governor has been discussing about the fundamental changes in education, training, digitizing the education process. I think in contemporary Africa or even Nigeria, there is no way you digitize education, technology without having a stable power, in the state. So I think it will serve as a mere speculation or something out of reality, because anything digital goes with electricity. And you're just telling us that next week, the power station will actually be commissioned. So meaning it is a peculiar issue with Nigeria and Africa for you to have, because there is one state in United States of America that generates and supply power more than the entire sub-Saharan Africa. So I think that should have been a priority before digitizing the economy. So we must...
Gali, thank you. Incidentally, the governor, of course, is still with us, so that he has time to respond to other issues. The analogy to Trump would not seem quite opposite. He's not the presidential candidate; he's a governorship candidate, and Trump has a number of issues. Yeah. You have seen Trump's relationship with the guns in the U.S. You've seen Trump's relationship to other races other than whites in the U.S. And so on and so forth. The governor has explained some of the issues you also just talked about in terms of power supply, Azura power plant, which feeds the national grid, and the power project embarked upon by the state government. But we'll give him the opportunity to touch on and respond to your observations with regard to the claims and counterclaims in the state. So back to His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State, in our Benin studios.
Very much. I believe some very, very interesting perspectives have been shared. Let me link the issue of demystification of governance with that of low voter turnout. in the past, you see, people, we just noticed that in Edo State, political participation was very, very low. Not because the people were not enlightened, but like was pointed out, they had become disinterested. You know, for the average person to go out on election day, there has to be an incentive. What is the need for me? Why am I going to vote? What does this mean to me? What some of the actors in the past had done that reduced our politics to one where people come out to be paid to vote. Because they didn't see they didn't see a stake. But today I can tell you that if we go in for the elections of the 19th, I have almost 200,000 to 300,000 parents who have a stake in my continuing as the governor of Edo State. And they will go vote their interests. We have thousands of market women and men, thousands of businesses who are going to come out to vote their interests because they have seen the difference that in the last 4 years, their businesses have prospered because of the changes that have been undertaken by us. So we're hoping that this election will address the issues of political participation in Edo State from a different angle than was in the past. And therefore, what's the opposition doing? Scaremongering, creating the fear that there will be violence, people will not be safe. So as a tactic to reduce political participation in the state. And I think that should be, noted. I don't see them being able to enforce the mayhem or the level of violence on that day. But that scare, that rhetoric of war is what they are propagating. The second issue that was raised I want to address is, what are these fundamental shifts? It's about institutionalization, shifting from a one-man rule, a godfather rule, to one in which there is a consensus that the people really matter. The people are the one who dictate, not one person. And the people dictate through institutions. And you can see that. For the claim that I'm not a political player, I'm not a team player, is wrong, very wrong. If anything, I am more of a team player than a lot of the other political actors. What has happened is some personalities who have come into our politics who, either out of sheer selfishness, arrogance, have just decided to be impetuous, to allow impunity be the order of the day. How can a party or an institution called a party have its own constitution and it's set aside? How can they set aside court judgments and expect that that institution will thrive? So what we've done as a government, what I've done as a governor, is to say, I am just an individual. Let me strengthen the institutions of governance. Let me strengthen the office of the governor. I will come, I've come in, I will leave, but the office of governor remains. So it's really sad when I see someone who has been a governor before deriding the office of governor, trashing the office he occupied, because in their minds, where they come from, they only matter, not the institutions. By assertion that we have 80% of the people behind me, you can prove it, the polls show it, provided those people are allowed to express their votes. They're allowed to, vote, and those votes should count. And you will see, because we didn't pay people to come out at our ward rallies. They voluntarily came out. In a place like Jetu, near Auchi, we had about 5,000 people in a ward rally. And when I looked around, I didn't see any hired buses. At the end of the rally, people just walked back to their homes. That is what politics should be about, not hiring fans or hiring followers and moving them from location to location in the guise that you are campaigning. Somebody talked about Shomole loyalists. It's a fallacy. If you look at it, the current government today, the governor, the deputy governor, the secretary to government, Nobody could have been more of an Ashomole loyalist than us. But when you see someone unravels himself, betrays a cause, deceives you, I mean, you then realize that, wait a minute, what is going on here? We all joined this cause, this political fight, because we said we wanted to emancipate our state. What I am doing today is what we agreed to do in 2007 or 8 when he came in. So nothing has changed for us. Much has changed for him. And you can see that attitude he took to the national level, and you see it cost him his jobs. You talk about resignations. You have those resignations. Yes, in any political fight or engagement, there'll be two sides. He's decided, to play his politics the way he wants to play it. And certainly there were people, because we were all one political family, there are people who are aligned to him. There are people who share some of his own views and tactics about governance, that everything is purchasable, that people are expendable. But there are many more people who just know that, look, politics is about my interests, it's about some ideals, it's about some goals, and they have stayed with us. And majority of people are like that. So not everybody is purchasable. In terms of what we have done, creating a digital economy, a digital society, yes, digitization is most effective, is most useful when you have the energy behind it. But you don't have to wait till you have 100% of your energy source and energy supply before you start the process of digitization. And the fact that you do not have constant power does not mean you don't. And by the way, Edo, Benin City, is the hub of electricity in Nigeria, because we have a full complement of generation, transmission, and distribution. The bulk of the power generated, particularly in the Delta, are all transmitted into Benin, and from Benin, they get redistributed or retransmitted across the country. So in terms of electricity, we've always had. But what we're doing, what we're saying is that for each to be effective, for each to reach our people, we need to have better control of the supply, and that's what we're doing. But the teacher tablets can be charged. They have solar charging terminals. The tablets are very rugged. The teacher charges her tablet, and for 2 or 3 or 4 days, she can go ahead without having to recharge those tablets, and that electricity is available. I think what has happened is that while we've spent our 4 years working for our people, rebuilding our society, these other guys had nothing else to do except just propagate lies, falsehood across the country. So it's unfortunate that some of those lies have stuck, but I just want to tell people that go on to authentic websites, go to our websites, go to websites of credible agencies to see what is going on in Edo State.
Governor Basiki, I'm sorry to interject here. There's so much we have not talked about, but our time is fast spent. I will just ask you this question, because I know that it is everybody's desire to have a peaceful, violent-free and fair election in Edo State. And that's a new concept I learned, which is the concept of rival partnership. And it's been tested by Professor Douglas Dion, Professor of Government in Harvard University. He does believe that, violence, war can be averted even between a hegemonic power and a challenger. And I can draw analogies where this, has happened. U.S. Soviet Union relationship, of course, during the Cold War, there was cooperation and confrontation. Even U.S. and China now, you see some form, of tension. If you look at the relationship between President Muhammadu Buhari, and the immediate past president, the immediate past president belongs to a different political party, and in that wise, a rival. But when it comes to issues of national interest, both of them come together to agree. When it comes to issues of regional interests. Both of them work together to agree. So do you think that both of you and other parties in Edo can have what is called rival partnership?
Yes, it is possible if we agree on some basic fundamentals. You can't have the rival partnership when you argue that something that exists does not exist, or you believe or you say that something that exists does not exist. So where do we start from? How do we even start reaching, the rival agreements? So it's about values. It's about your approach to your politics. Yes, we must at some point in time. If we are talking about Edo, and we are arguing that argument is that we want to make this a better society for ourselves and for our families, then why do we want to destroy it? I think for us, we are trying to prevent the destruction and decimation of our society. Here is a society, an empire, with a very, very proud people. And somebody or a set of people superintended a state where the children were living in hordes to go and do, because they were in search of opportunities across the world. And it didn't bother them. And today we're taking measures to stop that, and they are fighting. How do you agree on those? Where do you start the engagement from? So let's look at the issues. Like I said, they're very, very fundamental issues. We say, let's train our children. Let's give them better quality education. Someone will say, yes, I will do it. But I say, where's the evidence that you ever, you were ever interested in doing this? You had the opportunity, you did not. So it's not about, I will provide water, you didn't provide water. No. It's about that you don't even believe that we should provide water. You're just mouthing it. Because once so I think...
All right. Governor Obaseki, we're on the home stretch of this conversation. We are virtually wrapping up now. We still have some tweets to take, but I wanted to take this question along with, shall we say, your closing thoughts. There are still some issues hanging. One, there was a claim that you outsource jobs to non-Edo indigents. That's one. It was raised on Wednesday. And secondly, that yes, you are working. It is acknowledged by some of your supporters, but that the level of indebtedness of the state is huge, and that it could have been otherwise. I want to respond to this. That's local capital flight, if you like. The heavy indebtedness of the state, plus what should Edo people expect from you if you were re-elected?
Thank you. Here again is a bundle of lies and misinformation. When I took over in 2016, I retained all the contractors that my predecessor used, and most of them are still working with us in Edo today. Secondly, all the other smaller contracts, the rebuilding of our schools, the tarring of our inner city roads, were all done by Edo-based professionals and business people. Jobs were not outsourced. Why are so many people coming into the state with their own capital if we are taking the capital out? Where is all that capital formation that has gone on extensively in Edo State coming from in the last 4 years? Clearly, that is not true. What the issue is that I refuse to give jobs to people who do not have the capacity to do the jobs. Because I said, I am not going to give a contract to construct a road for 300 million naira per kilometer when that road can be constructed for 70 or 18 million naira per kilometer. Because I'll get more roads constructed if so that's the issue. Let nobody be deceived about the arguments about flights and all of that. No, if you don't have a construction company, why would I give you a contract? So that you can go and sell that contract to someone else who has a construction company? That's the issue. The second issue, Kingsley, just remind me again, I didn't take notes on it.
You had a lot on your plate. Indebtedness.
That's very interesting. I'm Well, here again, I decided to keep quiet and not to, because I cannot extricate myself from the previous administration, even though I didn't make all the decisions. When the previous administration came in 2008, the total indebtedness of the state was about 40 billion naira. By the time that administration exited in 2016, the indebtedness had gone to 160 billion naira. That was not my creation. In the meantime, between 2008 and 2016, the state earned almost 1 trillion naira. And if we did an objective assessment and a forensic audit of what was created in those 8 years and compare it with what we earned and what we borrowed, there'll be huge questions. But I am not looking to the past. I'm sure that's the fear that, oh, I'm going to open a can of worms and people could go to jail. That's not my objective. My objective is to look forward and to rebuild the Edo society. What's the last question, Kingsley?
Well, what should Edo people expect if you got re-elected on the 19th?
If you gauge the amount of development in the physical space, what we've done in terms of infrastructure, which has attracted a lot of interests of the Edo diaspora back at home. If you look at what we've done with things like education, what we're doing with agriculture, these are very early steps, but they're proving to be very successful. We will scale. Edo will be the hub for things like medical care, things like education, and the Edo economy will be one of the strongest in this country because we have everything. We have the energy source, we have oil and gas, we have the land, we have the sources of raw materials. But all of these will only happen when you have the right governance, which is what I am providing. So,
all right. Well, Your Excellency, Executive Governor of Edo State, we are out of time. Our directors and producers have been indicating to us that time is ticking. We'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate your time and wish you the very best in the elections. All right. Also here with us in the studios.
I thought we could just read out the tweets.
Well, I understand we're out of time for the tweets. We're of course on the Edo election, on the eve of the election, we'll return to the same subject matter. Okay?
All right, Kingsley. So on that note, let me quickly appreciate our guest, Esther Uzoma, co-convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. I know you have a lot to say, but please keep it for at the time Kingsley started. Said Dr. Sharif Gali Ibrahim, Department of Political Science, University of Abuja. Thank you also for finding time to join us. All right, Kingsley.
All right, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria and indeed for the week. We thank you for tuning in. The program returns Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, as the advice goes, stay safe and be well. Coronavirus isn't gone yet. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And indeed, you can also stand with us and, of course, stand against rape and rapists. I am Claire Delabo Abdurrazak. Bye-bye.